Hello and welcome. My name is Julie. I will be starting my live stream here at 1:30 in just a moment. I'm going to do a few checks, make sure that I am being seen and heard. And if you are tuning in for this live stream, thank you so very much. And if you are watching and you've watched the other streams today, thanks for coming back. We did a segment at 12 o'clock on the basics of rubber stamps. We did a segment at 12:30 on the basics of the papers. At 1 o'clock, we talked about inks. And here at our 1:30 segment, we are going to be talking about the basic tools. Now, I have been a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator for nearly 30 years, and I consider it an absolute joy and honor to be able to share some of the things that I've learned throughout those decades of stamping. Today, we are focusing on the basics. So for those of you who are new if you are new to crafting or to stamping, to card making, then welcome. You're going to learn a couple of things. If you are not new and you've already been around the creative community and you've already been perhaps stamping and card making for a long time, you might find that you learned something new today anyhow. So welcome to all of you. Now, in the event that you're catching this as a replay, I am posting these Facebook Lives on my YouTube channel so that they will be available to watch as replays. So if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. I appreciate you looking these up and tuning in. All right, let's talk about tools. I do want to mention my online store in case after today's videos you are excited and inspired and want to order products. I do have an online store you can shop 24/7. That is at this address. When you get to the checkout screen of my online store, kindly type in the host code. This is the current host code, and then hit apply. And this current host code is good through June 30th. So if you are watching after that code has expired, you can find, and you can always find, a current host code at my regular website, which is my blog and website, stampwithjuliebaum.com. I do want to invite you on Thursday night. We'll be doing a mystery stamping event for 1 hour or less. This is an event via Zoom. So no matter where you are in the country or even out of the country, you can tune in with a Zoom link and create with us. Pull from your own stash of products, papers, stamps, inks, and create the mystery card along with us. In order to participate, you will need a Zoom link. So please contact me directly, and you can find ways to contact me at stampwithjuliebaum.com if we are not already connected. And I will provide you with that link and also the clues that you will need to prepare for Thursday night's event. So let's talk about basic tools. I'm going to start with my scissors. These are the Stampin' Up! Scissors called paper snips. I love my paper snips. I have multiple pairs. And let me tell you a few things that I like about them. I like the size of them. They are small enough that when I do travel and I will be crafting, I'm able to slip these into a protective sleeve and throw them in my bag. They're a nice small size. They also are super sharp and have a very sharp point, which is super helpful when you're going to be cutting an image out, perhaps out of designer series paper or your cardstock. We commonly call that fussy cutting if you're actually using scissors and cutting an image out, and you just won't find a better choice than paper snips to do that. Now, another favorite tool that I use every single time that I'm creating is my bone folder. This is a tool that allows you to fold and make a crisp fold in your cardstock or paper. Let me just grab a card that is off screen right now. So like in the instance that I needed to fold this piece of cardstock, sorry, that one had something on it. Okay, so I've got this piece of cardstock that was scored and needs to be folded. By pressing this with your bone folder, you create a nice, tight, crisp fold line. So this is an essential tool to use. Now, if you are brand new and you don't have a bone folder and you're going to be jumping in today and making a stamp project, you can limp along for a little while by using perhaps the back side of a butter knife, or if you are into cooking, there is a chance that you have what is called a Pampered Chef scraper. A scraper makes a good substitute for a bone folder until you get one, but it's an expensive tool, one that's definitely worth having. This pointy end also comes in handy when you need to get inside a tight area to smooth out a crease. So there's the bone folder. Now, we also have a tool that is called a Take Your Pick tool. The Take Your Pick tool is kind of mini tools in one. And so there's a variety of things that this can do. So let's talk about those different things. This end, you can twist it to unlock it and remove it. And there is actually another tip. It looks like this, but the ends are different. That you can tuck into here, and the end of it would be a scoring tool. I didn't pull that out of my drawer, but in the explaining, I'm sure you're following. So that is one piece that you can insert into the handle. This is the second piece that you can insert into the handle, and it can go in this way with the spatula end down. Put it in and twist it. Now I have a nice pointy end. This can be helpful for picking up embellishments. It can be helpful for peeling the backing off of your adhesive tapes. Lots of times I will use the tool with this pointy end. The spatula end can be used for, it can be combined with a couple of products that are in the catalog, like embossing pastes and so forth, like a little spatula. But I have found the spatula end another helpful way sometimes to remove an embellishment from the backing sheet and pick it up so you can place it on to your project. Now, that said, embellishments, gems, sequins, there's really nothing quite as good as this end for picking up your embellishments. So this end that does have a little cap that you can cover it to protect it has a sticky substance, kind of like a blue goo. And this is helpful for picking up stones, rhinestones, gems, sequins. You can actually press it onto the little embellishment, slide it off of the backing sheet, and then place it on to your project. Another thing I've used this for is if I'm picking up a really small die cut. Let me see if I have something. Well, just to illustrate that, here's just a piece of paper. But if I have a teeny little die cut, I can actually use this to pick my die cut up and move it or slide it out of the way. So that is helpful. Now, one other thing that you can attach to your Take Your Pick tool on this end is this little die brush. And oh, it would go in this end, sorry, because it screws in. The die brush end is a very helpful tool when you have a stubborn or an intricate die that you're going to be using to die cut an image out. This will help to remove all those little pieces from the die. So again, we're not talking about technique during this segment, but we are talking about the tools that are very helpful. So this Take Your Pick tool, along with its interchangeable ends, is quite a handy one to have. All right, so I'm going to set that aside. And let's talk about punches and dies. Very early on when you start stamping, you may begin with just SIP, S-I-P, which stands for stamps, ink, and paper. Your stamping journey may start there, a stamp, an ink pad, and some paper. But very quickly you're going to find that you want to punch some shapes out to add interest and dimension to your project, and or use dies to die cut images out. So let's talk about punches and dies. I've got here two punches that I chose just for this segment. just to give you an idea, this one is our 2 3/8 inch circle punch. So what I want to talk about when I'm talking about this is a simple shape punch. We have tag shaped punches, banner shaped punches, different size circles, and so forth. A shape punch can be used in a variety of different ways. I'm going to talk about how to use the punches in just a minute. But aside from just a kind of a basic shape, then there are also punches that are more designed to coordinate with actual stamps. So this one will coordinate with a stamp set where you can actually stamp these flowers and or the leaf and then punch those images out. So you've either got basic kind of generic shapes or you have punches that are designed to absolutely coordinate with their stamp sets, even punches that sometimes coordinate with your designer series paper. So a word about our punches. On the back side, they do have a little locking mechanism. So to unlock a punch, you slide that, which releases the punch and allows it to open. At this point, the paper can be tucked down inside the punch so that you can punch it. Now, a really nice feature about a punch that will close and lock is these can be stored much more easily. They can be stored on a shelf or in a drawer, and they're nice and flat, as opposed to having to be stored with this awkward angle. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful design of these punches. And let me show you this one in the same way. Unlock, then it pops open. You're able to slide your paper or your cardstock down into the punch and then do your punching. And then to put it away, simply squeeze it shut, engage the lock, and then this can be stored easily and nice and flat. All right, so that is a word about punches. Let's also talk about dies. So dies, and it looks like I need to grab a set of dies. Is there one here? Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to put my microphone down on my desk, which means that I won't forget to put it back on. Like so. All right, let's talk about dies. Dies, in much the same way as punches, can either be just kind of generic shapes, which can be used in a multitude of ways. This particular die set is called Stylish Shapes, has a variety of different sizes of circles, banners, and squares, and happens to have that really delightful stitched edge look. Very, very popular set of dies. This one is going to stay in my collection for years and years to come. And then we also have dies that actually are designed to coordinate with the stamp set itself. So in this instance, Playing in the Rain, there is a cute little bunny stamp. And you can purchase coordinating dies that go with these images. And an example of that is this. This is the bunny die. And so after stamping this onto my paper, I can actually use this die to cut out the shape of the bunny. So you can see how that works. So your dies are cutting instruments that you can use to cut out shapes and or to cut out images after stamping them, or sometimes from your designer series paper. Now in our next segment at 2 o'clock, we are going to be talking about basic techniques. And so we'll come back and we'll talk more about the actual die cutting itself. But I wanted to mention as a tool, you have punches and dies. All right, there's another tool that is necessary if you're going to use dies, and that is the Stampin' Die Cut and Emboss machine. So I'm going to pull that into view so that you can see that. This is the regular size machine, Stampin' Cut and Emboss, and it is used for cutting out with those dies, as I mentioned, and it also is used for dry embossing or embossing with folders. Now, the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine is $128. If that is a little bit steep when you're just beginning crafting, you can buy a mini version of this machine that is running $66 right now in the 2023 annual catalog. So this is a wonderful machine. You've seen it closed up, and you could see how easily I can move it from place to place depending on where I'll be doing my stamping, or even take it on the go. And then the platform opens. And when you get your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, it includes the necessary plates. There are a couple of plates that are used when die cutting. Right now we're not discussing the actual technique of die cutting, but I just want to show you the parts. So there is a 1 plate, a 2 plate, and then 2 3 plates. You can see the number 3 here, and there are 2 of those. Those are the plates that you will typically use if you're doing die cutting. And if you're doing any embossing with embossing folders, then sometimes the specialty plate, which is a plate number 4, sometimes a plate number 4 comes into play. So that's the basic machine, which we're talking about, our basic tools, and it is used for both die cutting and also for embossing folders. I will mention, since we're talking about Stampin' Cut and Emboss, that those acrylic plates, and those are the 3 plates, eventually do get worn out. Now you're going to get a lot of mileage out of your plates before you have to replace them. You can see these are very, very, very well used, well loved plates. I will typically use 1 plate as my bottom plate and a different plate always on top. And the reason for that choice is this one is going to get lots of lines and markings in it from accepting the actual cutting process. And then once this one really gets worn out, I will retire this one. This one that's got a little bit of markings on it, but not nearly as much, becomes my new bottom plate. And then with my replacement plates, like here's a pack of brand new replacement plates. These are 3 plates and they come in a pack of 2. Then I will replace my top plate only. Now, not everybody does that. A lot of people will rotate the plates throughout the use. Sometimes they'll use them this way, sometimes this way, sometimes this way. It's just personal preference, but I tend to want to wear 1 plate out completely, then rotate and put a slightly used plate on the bottom and a brand new fresh plate on top. That's just the way I do it. Okay, a couple of other tools that are super important and not quite as complicated are going to be your paper trimmer, which looks like this and is used for not only measuring and cutting your papers or your cardstock, but can also be used as a scoring device. So in this instance, I'm just going to reach for that little scrap that I had here. That little blue scrap has disappeared. So let me find something else. All right. So let's say that I have this little piece of Lost Lagoon cardstock and I need to cut an inch piece from it. I can easily use my Stampin' trimmer, line the paper up at the 1 inch, and using the darker of the 2 blades, you'll see there's a light and a darker blade. The darker blade is the cutting blade, and I can cut my paper. If I don't need to cut paper, but I do want to make a score line, perhaps I'm making a box and I need to be able to fold it, or I'm making a fun fold card, then you place it at whatever measurement you need. I'll do 1 inch again. Put the cutting blade out of the way, and this time I'm going to use the light gray blade, and I'm just going to slide it back and forth 2 or 3 times, and that will create a score line in my card so that I can easily fold it. You see that? So our Stampin' Trimmer is an absolute essential as you begin your journey of crafting. You need something to cut your papers down, and you may find that you like the scoring tool as well. Now, since I brought up scoring, let's talk about the Simply Scored. This is my scoring tool of choice. I prefer this one to using the scoring blade on my trimmer, because at the top here, you'll see that there are little markers. So if I'm teaching a class, or I'm making a project that I'm going to make multiples of, and I have to do lots of scoring, this is a real time saver. So in the instance of this, I've got a little piece of designer series paper. If I need to make a 1-inch score line, I just line my little tool up at the 1 inch, draw straight down, and it has created a score line there. And if I needed one at 3 inches, I do the same process. These are not marked, especially for today's example, but I am showing you how the Simply Scored works. And then maybe on this side, I need a score line at 2 3/4 and at 3 1/4. And what I have quickly and easily done is created 4 score lines that I can now fold. Use my bone folder to make them even more crisp. And the process of doing that is just a little bit faster on your Simply Scored, because I didn't have to keep moving the paper and then using the scoring blade, moving the paper and using the scoring blade. It's just a little bit faster of an option. So I wanted to make sure that you understand about Simply Scored. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is a very inexpensive tool, but is quite handy to have even when you're just starting out, and that's this little Stampin' Pierce mat. If you are doing your stamping with a photopolymer stamp set, I have a photopolymer stamp that is mounted to the block right here. You are going to most of the time want to have the Stampin' Pierce mat underneath your paper. If I'm going to stamp onto this piece of cardstock, I would just lay it onto my mat, ink my stamp up, and then stamp with it right on here. Now the reason for that is contrary to a cling stamp, which has the red rubber, that's where the design has been etched into it. Then it has that little foam layer in there. This gives it a little bit of give when you're pressing it from your ink pad onto your paper. The photopolymer stamps do not have that layer of foam. They are just the piece that has been cut for the image, and there's no layer of foam. So often you will find that putting that Stampin' Pierce mat underneath your cardstock or your paper allows you that little bit of give that the stamp is not giving you just by the design of the stamp. So a Stampin' Pierce mat is super helpful to have. If you're just starting your crafting journey and you don't have a Stampin' Pierce mat, but you do have photopolymer mat stamps, you can limp along for a little while by creating a thickness out of maybe several sheets of copy paper or a couple sheets of cardstock, just something with some thickness and some give, and place that underneath your cardstock that you'll be doing your stamping on, and that will help. Now, it's not completely essential that you have anything under your cardstock, but you may find that when you're stamping with your photopolymer, your images don't come out quite as nicely as you would like them to, or perhaps not as crisp. And putting a layer underneath, or even better yet, your Stampin' Pierce mat underneath the piece that you'll be stamping on, can completely solve that issue. So there you have it. There is a quick discussion of some of my favorite tools that I reach for often. I do have a list of other tools that are non-Stampin' Up tools, and I have Amazon links for those on my YouTube channel. So if you want to find those, you can pretty much go to my YouTube channel, Stamp with Julie Baum, and look at any video and open the description box, and you will see those Amazon links to anywhere from 5 or 6 to about 10 or 12 other tools that I like to use regularly. I am doing one more segment, and that will be at 2 o'clock. So I'm going to sign off here for just a couple moments and come back at 2 o'clock with a discussion on basic stamping techniques. I hope that you join me then. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.